For external meninges, this is dura mater. After that will be rachnoid sheet, and deeply to the brain joins the pia mater. Pia mater and this is the vascular net. Vascular net is formed by arterial branches and vein branches. And the vein branches, do you see, they do very, do you see, big net. This net, do you see, does many anastomosis, do you see? And these veins, which complete into the pia mater, they divide into the superior, lateral, inferior, and this will be external, and inside will be, do you see, the deep veins. The external veins, they open into the spaces which are placed between layers of the dura mater, and they are called sinuses. Veins, these are tube organs, and their walls are so soft. They include adventition external sheet, muscular sheet, and endothelial sheet. But muscular sheet in the veins, it is thinner than in the arteries. This is one moment. And another, in the arteries, between muscular sheet and between adventition is placed internal elastic membrane. Between muscular sheet and the endothelial sheet, between muscular sheet and adventition is external elastic membrane. Between muscular sheet and endothelial sheet will be internal elastic membrane. For what these elastic membranes? These elastic membranes are very contrast or very strong in the big arteries. When the diameter of the arteries decreases, the thicket of the elastic membranes decreases. The very biggest thicket will be in the aorta, because they do resist tension. When the blood by pump directs into the aorta, the walls cannot expand very large, because this will be for the strong condition for the distal way of the blood. And in the veins, these elastic membranes are not contrast. And the veins, do you see, they can expand, they can, do you see, close, but veins also have the valves. They have valves, and by contraction of the muscular sheet, they can close the space. By clot, they can close the space. And maybe there's some disease of the valves, and some fibrinogen, do you see, or some other things, do you see, they will store on the cusps on the valves and can close the space. Because between veins are placed many anastomosis. And from this anastomosis, the blood, do you see, by breaches will open into the sinuses. Sinuses, these are longitudinal spaces between external and internal layer of the dura mater. Why the blood goes into the sinuses? You can see here we have net. The blood goes into the sinuses. If it cannot go here, it will go from this net by another directions, by many breaches. Why into the sinuses? Because the walls of the sinuses, you see, they are expand. This is one moment. And space every time is free. And also these longitudinal spaces, they like tubes. But do you see, the walls of them, they expand and they don't have valves. Because every time we have free passage of the blood through the sinuses. This one sinus continues into the another sinus continues into the next, and the blood from all sinuses by last way will collect into the sigmoid sinus. Sigmoid sinus, it comes to the jugular opening, do you see? You can see here is sigmoid sinus, here is sigmoid sinus, do you see? Here is sigmoid sinus. It comes to the jugular opening, and from jugular opening begins the jugular internal vein, which passes through the neck along of the carotid common artery. This is general jugular internal vein. But I will recollect you sinuses. You can see we have sagittal superior sinus. You see, from lateral sides of the hemispheres, the blood collects into the sagittal superior sinus, which came, do you see, to the confluence. Confluence, this is collector. Did you understand? And do you see, from medial side of the hemispheres and from callosum body, do you see the blood will come into the sagittal inferior sinus. From sagittal inferior sinus, do you see, by rectus sinus, by straight sinus, it comes into the collector confluence also. You can see from confluence begins, do you see, transverse sinus, right and left. Transverse sinuses, they collect blood, do you see, from occipital lobes of the hemispheres and from, do you see, upper side of the cerebellum. You can see transverse sinus, do you see, collects the blood from occipital lobes of the hemispheres and from upper side of the cerebellum. Here, do you see, into the confluence opens the occipital sinus. Occipital sinus collects the blood from medial sides of the hemispheres of the cerebellum and from vermis. Transverse sinuses, they, do you see, get the indirect way, and the continuation of the transverse sinuses will be sigmoid sinus. Sigmoid sinus comes to the jugular opening, and below than it will continue by jugular internal vein. From, do you see, base of the brain, do you see, will start sphenoid sinuses, and sphenoid sinuses will collect blood from basal side of the frontal lobes, and sphenoid sinuses will continue into the cavernous sinuses, which are placed to both sides from thoracic septum. And cavernous sinuses, they have breaches. Right cavernous sinus and left cavernous sinus, they have the communication by intercavernous sinuses. This is very important region because, you see, here into the sinuses will be draination of the hypothalamus, which is very general vegetative center, and also hypophysis, pituitary gland. And also into the cavernous sinuses will open the veins, ophthalmic superior veins. Because if you remember, eye has the biggest portion of the neurons, unipolar, bipolar, multipolar, which complete into the retina, and it must have very best draination, and ophthalmic vein, it opens into the cavernous sinuses. Ophthalmic superior vein is very important. You can see by petrosus superior sinus, which passes through the lateral groove, do you see, will be drainated the basal side of the parietal and temporal lobes. And by petrosus inferior sinus, which will be continuation of the cavernous sinus, do you see, the blood will come to the sigmoid sinus before its continuation into the jugular internal. We have petrosus superior sinus, do you see, which drainates the lower side of the parietal and temporal lobe, and it opens into the beginning of the sigmoid sinus, which is a continuation of the transverse. And the petrosus inferior, like continuation of the cavernous sinus, it opens into the end of the sigmoid sinus. I will recollect you. Petrosus superior opens into the beginning of the sigmoid sinus, and petrosus inferior into its end before its continuation into the jugular internal vein. These are sinuses. If you remember, sinuses, they collect the biggest portion, 90% of the deoxygenated blood from cerebral veins. Cerebral veins, they drainate the tissues fluid, takes out the things from metabolism, and the dioxygen from brain. You can see we have extra exit from sagittal superior sinus by the tip of the head will open parietal openings through which will exit emissary veins, and they will take the some portion from sagittal superior sinus and will direct into the subskin veins of the head. You can see mastoid opening. It begins from sigmoid sinus and will take the some portion of the blood and will direct out into the subskin veins. And do you see, and here do you see, from the sigmoid sinus again will exit the emissary vein, which is called condylite vein. It will exit by condylite open, foramen candidialis, do you see, and will open into the veins of the neck. You can see this, do you see, veins, they take out from 10 till 15% of the deoxygenated blood, and they help, do you see, the sinuses of the brain to evacuate the blood from brain. This is about sinuses. Listen to me, last time we started with you superior vena cava. And what we studied? How it was formed. By brachiocephalic left, by brachiocephalic right, and azygos vein, if you remember. And today we have to see the topic, which is draination of the head and neck. You can see the following. On the head, like on another regions of the all our organism, the number of the veins in 2.5 times more than the number of the arteries. More of veins, they are placed along of the same arteries, and they evacuate the deoxygenated blood from objects which same arteries supplied. But the some veins, they are placed individually, and on the head we have many individual veins on the head and on the neck. If you remember, on the neck begins and goes below. Here you can see on the neck, you will look of the model. Here, and last time I showed you, here do you see from jugular opening begins and directs below jugular internal vein. This is very general, very biggest vein. Into the jugular internal vein will open more veins of the neck, more veins of the neck. And they accord the names of the arteries. But besides this jugular internal vein, we have, do you see, jugular anterior vein. Jugular anterior vein, it starts from submental region and is placed, do you see, below than the muscular floor of the mouth and above than the skin. And it drainates this submental region. But after draination of this submental region, it enters into the interaponeurotic space. What is interaponeurotic space? If you remember, on the neck we studied the some groups of the muscles. Extra-superficial platysma for the expanding of the skin, concrete superficial, this is sternocleidomastoid. Another medial group which subdivides into the suprahyoid and infrahyoid. Suprahyoid, some muscles of the suprahyoid group, they complete the floor of the mouth. Mylohyoid, geniohyoid, anterior belly of the digastric. Stylohyoid and posterior belly of the digastric, they don't complete into the floor of the mouth, but they will accord suprahyoid group. Infrahyoid group. Infrahyoid group, do you see, it starts from sternum, but if you remember, this is sternum. Here is sternocleidomastoid muscle. It begins from sternum here and from clavicle, do you see? It begins from anterior side of the sternum, on right side and on left side. We have sternal leg, clavicular leg, sternal leg, clavicular leg. If we will look, do you see, if we will take out, do you see, the skin together with platysma muscle, we see like wide tendon. Because one tendon, another tendon, another tendon, another tendon, this, do you see, is false vision. Because we will associate like wide tendon. And listen to me, what is name of the wide tendon?
Eponymous.
epinephrosis. And we will have association like epinephrosis. From posterior side of the sternum begins sternothyroid, sternohyoid, sternothyroid, sternohyoid. If we will look, do you see, at this tendons, again we have the false vision, like epinephrosis. Because fascia covers sternocleidomastoid muscle, do you see, and fascia covers, do you see, infrahyoid muscles. And here will be space. And this space is called interepinephrotic space. Because we think about collection of the tendons like about epinephrosis. Interepinephrotic between epinephrosis. Into this interepinephrotic space comes the jugular anterior vein. It is placed individually because artery special alone of it we don't have. And this is one moment. And it comes into the interepinephrotic space. When it comes into the interepinephrotic space, do you see, it can be long and is placed in the center. If it is long, do you see, it divides into two legs, and each leg directs to its side, to right or to left, and opens into the jugular external vein. But very often, by 70%, it can be present by two, right and left anterior jugular vein. If, do you see, we have two veins, they direct below, they go to their sides into the external jugular vein, but before direction to sides, they have bridge. This bridge is called the vein cervical arc. You must remember about this. But listen to me. You can see this is sternocleidomastoid muscle. Vision, this is vision from side. And this, do you see, is infrahyoid group. Do you see? And here will be space. Into the space came vein. What are the infrahyoid muscles? Do you see? Sternohyoid, sternothyroid, sternohyoid, and omohyoid. Listen to me. The fascia covers sternothyroid, sternohyoid, omohyoid, to this side and to this side. But all came to the hyoid bone. Fascia will cover sternothyroid, sternohyoid, and omohyoid. If we will look by frontal plan, this fascia, which dresses the muscles, do you see, it has triangular shape. It is called cervical sail. Very cervicalis. Sail. No, sail on the ship. Did you understand? Sail. Listen to me. Cervical sail. Why? Show us your neck. Do this volume. Evacuate the salivary fluid from mouth, or do you see hyoid bone together with larynx goes? Do you see above, and after that comes back? You can see infrahyoid muscles. They stretch below, do you see, the hyoid bone. When we do this volume, at first suprahyoid muscles stretch above, do you see, and the infrahyoid stretch below. For the very easy passage of the food or of the salivary fluid into the esophagus behind of the larynx. Listen to me, we do swallow every time. We don't think, because every time our salivary glands produce the salivary fluid, and do this because every time we do. Because look to it here, when these muscles, these are infrahyoid muscles, when they contract, the space increases. When do you see the muscles relax, do you see the space decreases and can so press the anterior jugular vein. Because if we do swallow every time, do you see, we have to evacuate the blood by anterior jugular vein, do you see, distally below into the jugular external. Did you understand? This is jugular anterior vein, which is placed, do you see, on the neck individually without arteries, without same arteries. Do you see? Jugular internal vein, it is placed along of the carotid common artery. It is biggest. Besides this, we have the jugular external vein. This is jugular anterior vein. Do you see? And this is jugular anterior. This is jugular external vein. Recollect me. Do you see? This is jugular external vein. Recollect me, please. What are posterior branches of the carotid external artery? What are posterior branches of the carotid external artery? No, who remembers? My dear. Next lesson, control.
Occipital artery.
Occipital artery. Auricle posterior, occipital and sternocleidomastoid. Listen to me. Occipital vein, it goes along of the occipital artery. But it, do you see, through it, the blood passes below. Do you see? Do you see? Auricle posterior artery, do you see? It, together with occipital artery, continues below. And do you see? They complete into the jugular external vein. And another vein, do you see? This will be suprascapular. Do you remember sinus cervical trunk from subclavian artery gave cervical ascending, thyroid inferior, and suprascapular. Only here suprascapular will complete into the jugular external. Jugular external will be completed like carotid external artery by occipital and auricle posterior. And do you see, it gets, do you see, individually the suprascapular. They complete into the jugular external. Jugular external, it opens into the subclavian, and before its visit into the subclavian, it gets blood from jugular anterior. But besides this, do you see, into the jugular external, we have bridge which came from retromandibular vein. Retromandibular. We get a new name. We didn't study retromandibular artery. We get new name. Retromandibular vein, do you see, it is placed behind of the angle of the mandible, and it is a result of the connection of the temporal superficial and temporal deep. Temporal superficial and temporal deep, they complete into the retromandibular. Retromandibular has communication, do you see, with facial vein. And do you see, by 50% into it opens the lingual vein. Lingual, it can open into the jugular internal or it can open into the retromandibular. But into the retromandibular brings blood maxillary vein. Maxillary vein can be present by one or can be present by two. But maxillary vein doesn't repeat the maxillary artery. Do you see? Here is a maxillary artery. Do you see? Maxillary artery, it divided into three regions: mandible, infratemporal, and pterygopalatine, and each region gave the some branches. Around of the maxillary artery, here is very active, very wide pterygoid plexus. Pterygoid plexus, do you see, it covers, this net covers the maxillary artery and collects blood from all branches which accord divisions of the maxillary artery. But if you remember, some minutes ago, we said with you about ophthalmic superior artery which opens into the cavernous sinus. It is called ophthalmic superior. But do you remember when we studied blood supply over the eye, we said ophthalmic artery which began from carotid internal. Ophthalmic artery, it is long. Ophthalmic superior vein, it informs us about, do you see, about another artery, ophthalmic inferior. Ophthalmic inferior artery from the orbit by inferior orbital fissure will open into the pterygoid plexus. And pterygoid plexus collected blood from whole facial region and the branches which complete into the pterygoid plexus, they accord, I will repeat, the branches of the maxillary artery which gave by different regions, and also it gets the ophthalmic inferior artery. From this net collects into one or two maxillary veins, and they are short. And do you see these maxillary veins? Do you see they will open directly into the retromandibular vein? You can see on the neck we have, do you see, the jugular external vein, jugular anterior vein, and jugular internal vein, which is very, very general. And also we have extra vein, which is called a retromandibular. This is one moment. Another moment. Do you remember we said with you, if the organs like endocrine organs are very important for our life, they have the very best blood supply. But if the organs are important for our life, they have more veins for the draination. Because through the one moment any portion of the blood came to the organ, through the same moment the biggest portion of the blood must exit. And how it can exit if the velocity of the deoxygenated blood is lesser? Only by increasing of the number of the branches. On the neck we have thyroid gland. Thyroid gland. If you remember, thyroid gland was supplied by thyroid superior artery from carotid external, by thyroid inferior from thyrocervical trunk. Draination will be thyroid superior, which will open directly into the jugular internal. Thyroid medial extra vein, which also opens into the jugular internal. And thyroid inferior, it opens into the subclavian or into the brachiocephalic vein. And 70% of the people have this special vein, which is called thyroid ema. Thyroid ema, it opens directly into the brachiocephalic left vein. Brachiocephalic is long, and thyroid ema, it is placed by center and opens directly. If the thyroid ema is placed, it will be general biggest vein for the draination of the thyroid gland. Why? Because it is placed vertically, the blood will go by its weight below, and it opens directly into the brachiocephalic. All another, thyroid, do you see, superior, thyroid medial, they will go into the jugular internal. Jugular internal, do you see, will open into the brachiocephalic. Did you understand? You can see this is the information about which I wanted to recollect you today.